A very good morning to one and all. Thank you everyone who has joined us this morning. We all are gathered here for the today's event, Impact Lecture Phase 2, Session 1. I'm Professor Aarti Valsang. Welcome you all on behalf of AGPIT IIC Committee for this auspicious event. I welcome our Campus Director, Dr. M.A. Chaugule sir, our Principal, Dr. S.A. Patil sir, Vice Principal, Dr. B.B. Poddar sir, IIC Chairman, Professor S.R. Sakre Madam, all the heads of the department, my colleagues, and all my dear students. I extend my warm welcome for our today's guest, Dr. Y. Srinivasa Rao, who is now going to speak about entrepreneurship and its effect on economical growth. Welcome you, sir. So Satyanarayana sir, I welcome you.
Amen.
So now I would like to request Sakre Madam to talk about the Impact Lecture series.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, participants. We've all gathered here for the Impact Lecture Series Phase 2, which is organized under the AICT Institute Innovation Council, which is sponsored by Ministry of Education. The IIC under NOE has a very specified aim of conducting the Impact Lecture Series just to have a development of ecosystems of innovations and entrepreneurship in the young generation. This activity also aims in converting a novel idea and the critical thinking that the student has and convert this into a wealth creation at the individual level and at the national level as well. So if we grow as an individual, then only we can have our nation in the development form. So this organization is also helping and nurturing the leadership potential of the student innovators and the entrepreneurs by making them do the coordinated roles in achieving the program objectives. With this, we have tried to lay the foundation for the initiatives as the ARIA, the Institute Innovation Council, then under this NISP, we have the aim that to grab the potential of the students to make some entrepreneurial skill and then come up with some startups and be a part of we can say Swayam Bharat. So this is a very humble idea what Ministry of Education has incurred on the institutes where we have to look into this matter because we have a lot of resources as higher education institutes and we can make this provided to so many downtrodden villages or the villages or wherever this is not accessed. So this is the way we are trying to inculcate the, we can say, the skills of entrepreneurship. And another, we are having so many topics to be covered in this phase 2. So I welcome Satyanarayana sir and all the participants for this session. Over to you, Vasant.
Thank you, madam. On that note, let me introduce and welcome the chief guest, Satyanarayana sir. So Dr. Y. Okay, yes. So there is one small mistake. Just wait for a minute. Okay, so Dr. B. Satyanarayana did his MTech in Electronics and Communication Engineering from JNT University, Hyderabad, and PhD in Physics from IIT Bombay. He is working in the Department of High Energy Physics, EIFR, since 1983, and he is currently a scientific officer. He is also visiting professor at the Applied Science Department of the American College, Madurai. His areas of interest includes detectors and instrumentations for high energy and nuclear physics experiments. Dr. Satyanarayana has published about 250 research papers and proceedings in national and international journals and conferences. Besides scores of invited talks, his very first paper won the Best Paper Award by the Institution of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering. Dr. Satyanarayana is fellow of Institution of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineers and Institute of Engineers. He is a member of Governing Council of Instrument Society of India, as well as member of Indian Physics Association. He guided a large number of doctoral, master, and undergraduate students. He served on many of doctoral and expert committees, as well as academic councils, board of studies, and advisory board on colleges and universities. He is on the editorial and referring terms of several prestigious science and engineering journals. Dr. Satyanarayana is a senior member of IEEE. He is currently an executive committee member and vice chair of the IEEE Bombay section, as well as the chair of IT Signals Processing Society. He's previously served as a secretary of the section as well as chair of the technical and professional activities. He also served an executive committee member as well as vice chair of the IEEE India Council. He won IEEE Bombay section's Outstanding Volunteer Award for 2014 and IEEE Headquarters MGA Achievement Awards for 2016. So, welcome you, sir, for this Impact Lecture Series. Now, I would like to request our principal, sir, to address the event.
Okay, good morning to all.
Good morning.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Today's resource person, Dr. B. Satyanarayana, and the another resource person in the maybe the afternoon session, Dr. Y.P. Rao from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Institute of Technology, Mumbai. So, welcome, sir, both of you for this session. So, for the information of our guests, I would like to inform about our institute. Our institute, A.G. Patel Institute of Technology, was started under Shanti Education Society by our Honorable Chairman, Sri A.G. Patel, sir. It is started in 2008, and now presently we are running 4 branches in UG and 1 in PG. 4 branches in mechanical engineering, computer engineering, electronics and telecommunication engineering, and civil engineering, and 1 PG course in mechanical engineering, that is manufacturing process engineering. So our institute is, earlier it was affiliated to Solapur University, but since last 5 years now it is affiliated to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Technological University, Lonere. It's a state technical university in Maharashtra. So our institute has produced around more than 2,000 engineers, and they are working in the field in various industries, etc. We have got a good tradition of, you can say, or a good blend of this education as well as the overall development of the students. We arrange the various programs like the paper presentation contest as well as the other, you can say, activities which will develop our students in a overall manner. And I am very happy to inform you all of you that many of our students have been placed in very reputed organizations like Infosys, again TCS, Wipro, Cognizant, Persistent, and so on. Okay, not only from computer engineering but even from mechanical, civil, and electronics engineers. So many of our students are placed with a very good package. So today's this program under IIC Institute Innovative Council, which is formed under the AICT. So I'm very happy to inform you that even in the Impact Lecture Series, first also we organize such lectures, and now this is the Impact Lecture 2 also. Our institute has been selected, and we are organizing such program for the benefit of our students as well as faculty, as well as the students and other faculties of other institutes. And I'm very happy to rope in, or I can say invite the very reputed resource persons like Dr. B. Satyanarayana and Dr. Y.P. Rao for this program. And I'm sure that all the participants, they will get benefited by the informative lecture series arranged by them. Okay, so I once again welcome the resource persons, and I expect that all the participants will enjoy this series. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to request our today's guest to continue the further session.
Ma'am, can I share my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay, I'll let me put it in full screen. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. And please let me know if the slides are the slides moving?
Yes, sir. Moving it.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you very much. So once again, good morning to everyone. Good morning to Dr. S. A. Patil, the principal of the H. Patil College, and also thanks to Ma'am Sureka Sakdev Ma'am for this invitation to me, who asked me to kind of speak on this particular topic of entrepreneurship and its effect on economic growth. I want to little bit confess in the very beginning that I'm not sure I'm the right person to speak on this particular topic. As ma'am introduced me, that I work in essentially a fundamental research institute. But of course, we do know these days that irrespective of whether it is a research institute or an academic institute, the entrepreneurship has become necessarily has become a kind of a buzzword everywhere. That is because gone are the days where research is done in an ivory tower. Academic activities, mainly teaching, is done in a university or a college, and industry, production, entrepreneurship, etc., is limited to industry. So these were obviously a kind of vertical towers, if I can say this, in the olden days. Of course, we all grown up with that kind of environment. But the fact that now there has been a new rethinking about the prosperity model, and also the way that you kind of think that there must be a bigger synergy between the major fields, and at the same time also a kind of interdisciplinary approach within the same entity has become a reality. It's not a reality just only in the country, but of course it has been a reality world over. And then a country like India, which is fast growing, cannot be let us say mute spectator to such kind of reality. So therefore now, as I mentioned, even though I come from an institute which predominantly works on basic sciences and fundamental research, even at TIFR we do have now working, at least growing towards starting of companies, Section 8 companies, and starting of entrepreneurship cells, and faculties starting their own ventures and things like that. So therefore, I want to kind of talk a little bit more on how such a ecosystem and ambience becomes part and parcel of any academic institutions like yours, which Sir has already mentioned, for its growth and for its achievement. So I take this opportunity to kind of share some of my thoughts on why such an environment becomes a necessity and probably the right thing to do at the academic institutions like yours. Okay, so with that kind of a preload, let me go into my talk. I want to first ask a question that when we talk about entrepreneurship, innovation that happens to convert certain academic ideas, research ideas into innovate these ideas into, let us say, creating a products or value adds. I want to kind of take you and say that when do we look towards innovations? When do you often say, no, there's something new needs to be done, something more efficient needs to be done, and so on? When do we get such kind of necessities, right? I'll give you a few examples. I'll give you 3 different examples, and you will really wonder how such a things have been possible in the history of technology, right, or industry for that matter. Now, the one that I have shown on the top is what we say, sometimes you want to improve the way certain things are done typically. It could be agriculture as it is shown here. It could be industry. It could be even education. It could be business, anything like that. There is a certain way things have been happening and we want to improve. We want to mechanize. We want to automatize. We want to improve the efficiency. We want to improve the quality of those products that are produced, the instruments that are built, and so on and so forth. Of course, I gave an image here, which is basically an agricultural practice that is done to sow the saplings of paddy and so on. But the point is that these are all done manually. Can we improve? Can we mechanize? Can we build? Can we innovate? Let us say an automated machine into which the saplings could be planted in a field very nicely with a good control, and then very fast. Whatever can be done by 100 land laborers, as they're called, into one machine that can do in a day or whatever, right? I mean, this is so improving of an existing system of doing things. It could be agriculture or it could be industry, as I mentioned. The other 2, you will be a bit surprised that I have included in this when we would look towards innovations. One I said is wars and conflicts between countries, right? I mean, this is not a good thing. I mean, obviously, war is never a good thing to kind of have it. So why did I bring this here? Because I said that quite often, driven by the basic science about which I talked briefly earlier, and also kind of engineering research that goes behind, during the wars, it becomes quite an important to innovate, to make specialized, strategic, or secret, or proprietary work. Now these are all many different words I used here. What I really wanted to say is that since war, after all, is a bad thing, I agree, but it's also something that you want to win over somebody else or whatever. So you develop very quickly, very suddenly, with a very important strategic importance or secret importance. You want to build certain technology, certain engineering. Okay. For example, during the world wars, we have seen a lot of communication technology, cryptography, sending data secretly, computer communication, many other fields of technologies. You will be surprised. Even today, what some of these technologies we use actually has origins during the wars and conflicts. Okay, so I repeat, I don't want to say that wars are good because they breed technologies and innovations, but it's a fact that during such kind of conflicts and wars, there is a sudden development of technologies that happen, in innovation take place, and these innovations are such that they are better than your so-called enemies and so on. So there is a competition between the innovators on a country A and country B. Remember, these words that I use are the same sometimes we use in a peaceful development of innovative products, but I just wanted to give that kind of a feeling. Now, third point, which we have gone through recently and probably still going through, we are not completely, I think, grown out of it, is something to connect it with human health, diseases, and pandemics. Corona, of course, is a pandemic. Now, with such kind of worldwide concern that happens for such kind of pandemics like Corona, often there is a need for a collaborative efforts of innovation. Now, just remember what I said for wars and conflicts. You don't want to collaborate with your enemy and develop technologies, right? You want to compete with your enemy and develop technologies. But in the case of pandemics or diseases or human health, often there is no secrecy. You would like to get benefit and make collaborative efforts between one country to another country, develop certain method to diagnose corona, develop certain vaccines, develop certain medicines together. So India or US or China or whatever countries, Europe or Japan or whatever, all these countries try to kind of understand what this problem is and try to innovate and produce products which becomes not only useful for a single country, but also useful for all the other countries as well, right? Now, remember, during this time of Corona or whatever, all of us were looking towards science, looking towards medicine, looking towards pharmaceuticals, looking towards engineering and technology. Often we are asking, oh, when will the vaccine come? When will the new product for drugs come? When will be a new way of diagnosing the corona comes in? When will the products come to monitor or oxygen levels in the blood or CT scans? Remember, see, these are all innovations, right? Innovations for benefit of humanity, especially the suffering of humanity, right? So these three scenarios, they look very different. One, gradual improvement of products and and mechanization, and the other we are talking about secret developments of innovative products, and the third one we are talking about very useful to the humanity, collaborative efforts and so on. But there is one common underlying word among these three different categories of developments is innovation, right? Innovation is what drives human prosperity. Innovation is what it is about entrepreneurship to the level where it actually improves the standard of living that we live in. So remember, so why I really wanted to bring these three distinct examples is to kind of say there is an underlying principle among all of these, right? Okay. Now, if you really want to look at a little bit in the history, let us say some 200, 300 years old history, and we ask this question that what I just now showed in the before, and say that what are these different, let us say, waves? Okay. Now, of course, unfortunately, we also use word called wave in the context of corona, but these waves are much more positive waves than we talk in terms of corona and so on. Okay. So how from the very basic industrial revolution to today, what we want to all talk about, so-called sustainable technology, a technology which remains, which persists, which doesn't, do things very nicely for a short time and, kind of cause some damage later. We don't want such kind of technology. We wanted to have technologies which are sustainable, which are everlasting, right? So what are these things? So this particular theory, of course, was put up by Joseph Schumpeter in 1942 in his this particular he created this word called creative destruction. It's very important. Destruction is not something which you want to destroy something. You kind of destroy something, an old concept, and create something new, which is going to kind of become much more useful, create much more efficient products in the history. So he kind of examined how an innovation in relation to a product development or a concept development is actually going to lead to ultimately a very fruitful business cycle. It's very interesting. If you look at, you go back almost to 1800s, maybe late 1700, what was that which has created a big impact in the humankind is, using water power, hydro, like for example, you call sometimes hydropower, right? And the fact that one could make textiles, so that has brought humankind from let us say using leaves or other things as clothes to actually wearing the clothes the way we wear, and using metals and to make iron implements for agriculture and many other purposes. Today, when you go back and look at a few hundred years back story, you might look that, it doesn't look like a great wave, but if you are in 1700s, you'll realize using iron implements, not stones and so on, or using textiles, not leaves or some other things to wear clothes, and or using manual power instead of that, use water power to do certain things. These are obviously very innovative as you can think of today. I use AI or ML or whatever, neural network, etc. But because it is something which has changed human, lifestyle or quality of living from what they have to the very much next level. And remember, there is certain way that these waves were shown, and they were also shown one above above the previous one and so on, to say that is the human progress that happens. Okay, when you come to the second wave, water has been replaced by steam, and I'm sure you remember the steam engines. James Watt produced the locomotives, as we call today. Now it may look silly to talk about steam power when we have new innovations in terms of innovative fuels and so on and so forth, but going from water to steam itself is a big wave, and going from walking to a place to travel by rail is a big second wave. And similarly, using not just iron, which is available in the earth, but creating steel out of it by adding carbon was a big wave. Similarly, third, you become a big leap. You went to electricity. You used chemicals now, right? Not using only what are available in the nature. And then, as I said, internal combustion engines were not steam now, but petrol vehicles, diesel vehicles kind of thing, using IC engines, you call that, has become, the big innovation. And then in a big way, not just only the chemicals, now you have petrochemicals, you have electronics, which has come into the being, and many of you maybe are from electronics background, and now not rail, but go by much faster transport by using aviation and so on. And maybe some of you are born at the time when the fifth wave was in progress. We talk about digital network, we talk about software that it's doing varieties of jobs, we talk about new media of communications which have become very common these days, and so on. Of course, today in the college campus, you are now experiencing the sixth wave, where often you talk, your students, co-students, faculty to faculty, talking about artificial intelligence, talking about IoT, talking about robotics, drones, whatnot. But remember, I told you that we are also looking for sustainable development, sustainable technology, clean technology, and so on and so forth. And of course, this is shown as the dotted line because it is not complete, and today we are experiencing the effects of all these, the new paradigms of the sixth wave. Now, this is in some sense a context which has driven innovation, which has driven, resulted ultimately doing something like a business entrepreneurship. So it is in some sense you cannot separate them. They're inseparable. Anything starts from a a kind of basic innovation, one day it becomes a commercial, let us say, entity that brings prosperity to the people and the country, right? Okay, so now when we talk about the so-called waves and whatever, we also talked about certain breakthroughs that happened. I actually showed you in the previous slide, right? So, for example, in the first wave, we did mention in the context of industrial revolution, which we studied in school as a part of social studies and so on, right? And something to do with the mill rather than a handmade cotton mills, for example, that has driven the first wave. The second wave was, as I said, was driven by steam engines. So railways have become, their network has become all throughout the world, and we ourselves, our railway networks have become visible way back in few hundred years old, of course, during the days of Britishers. And remember, today the way we see urban growth has actually come from the second wave as railways got proliferated. And making things in an industrial, what you can call that as a assembly line, you call. No, if you go to an industry, you will see things are manufactured batch by batch, and they're all assembled one after the other and so on. Not like somebody sitting and making an entire car or an automobile together and then another automobile. It's not how it is created. Somebody creates tires, somebody creates engine, somebody creates body, somebody creates something, and then the things get assembled. So this assembly line concept, whether it is automobile, whether it is electronics, whether it is any other industry, has also played a major role in prosperity. Of course, fourth wave, as I said, aviation, and similarly the fifth wave is where the entire IoT, electronics, sensors, etc. Today we all talk about IoT as if it's a very, very common word. But again, mapping these breakthroughs, mapping these inventions, innovations to those waves. And we also said that today we have seen 5 such waves, and we realize that you cannot do things very indiscriminately to the ecosystem, environment, and so on. Of course, we want to make progress. Definitely, nobody wants to stand still, but the progress we want to see it is something which doesn't damage our ecosystem, and we don't want to damage our climatic, challenges, etc. We want to kind of keep them in proper shape, clean technology, and you want to. So, but then point is, how did these reshape the business models that we are going to talk now, right? Earlier, there were no restrictions. You could start a innovative, enterprise by using as much as diesel you want, as much as petrol you want, as much as something you want, as much as coal you want, and so on and so forth. Why? Because you thought that my important thing is to innovate something, make a product which comes out and become very useful. You didn't care about how to save the environment or how to see for future sustainable growth. But then when you are challenged by saying, that's why you see this color suddenly change to green here, to kind of say that now your business enterprises are also should be socially responsible, and you cannot do things, developments indiscriminately. So therefore, please use wind energy, please use solar energy, or please use renewable energy sources, or you find machines which are fuel efficient, and this and that. And you can see that the paradigm of doing business or entrepreneurship over a period of time become more challenging, because you are now constrained by not only the innovative nature of your products, but also you are constrained in some sense by other social and responsible kind of paradigms that will also become a part and parcel of your design of new products and so on. Okay. Now, so in this context of bringing up more responsible entrepreneurs, more responsible entrepreneurship, how do you teach? How do you train? How do you inculcate these paradigms into young, let us say, our entrepreneurs? Because now we depend on their shoulders to kind of look up, not just as students who understood what you taught in the college as certain subjects. It doesn't matter what engineering subjects that you are supposed to teach, but if you want to make them ready, some of them, of course, not everyone would like to become an entrepreneur by themselves. We'll see those details a little later. So how do you kind of train? Actually, the question to ask is, can universities really teach entrepreneurship? Because we are talking in the beginning about lots of things which is look like industrial flavor, right? But university is supposed to kind of teach very kind of essential things, education that we call associated with universities. And what do we do to the students? We want to make them, we want to inculcate thinking abilities. We want to enhance their thinking abilities. Given a problem, how do you deduct? How do you make certain logical conclusion? This is what we teach in an academic institution, isn't it? Okay, but so therefore, traditionally we say, okay, university is nothing but, we want to transfer knowledge and also make the students like so-called industry ready. We want ourselves to be a kind of bridge between academia and then industry when the student goes out, etc. But the universities now, there is more and more realization, can also impart the entrepreneurial skills and knowledge. Just like you update their knowledge in an academic subject, you can also update the existing, programs that you have on campus, or maybe sometimes, as you yourself have been experiencing, I'm quite sure about it, to kind of change, especially the universities and colleges where they are autonomous, for example, then they're able to kind of do these things in much more creative way, that modify the existing curriculum, existing courses, and bring an entrepreneurial aspects into an existing course. When you teach something, how a device works, how an instrument works, at the same time, you also extend that to say that, okay, if you are to design or if you want to innovate an existing device or instrument, how do you do it, etc. Right? Now, if you take your university or college even one step further, you could also say that, okay, on my campus, on my college, I also have certain research programs, okay, certain applied research programs, not like what, as I said, people like us, we do at the research institute, but these are more of directly applicable research fields, applied research fields. Then what is the outcome? You are inculcating, you are engaging the students into this whole gamut of things. You may be able to produce, for example, patents, you may be publishing articles, you may be so-called, doing IPRs, okay, intellectual property rights, etc. And then converging all these efforts and then experience and creativity of students and faculty. So there I have let us say, a bunch of undergraduate and postgraduate students who are, some of them are quite bright. Let us say there are faculties whose special interest are towards entrepreneurship, innovation, or some R&D or applied research and so on. So I kind of combine the joint efforts on the campus and able to kind of do something very useful. By the way, this useful is not only to the faculty, it is also useful to the college overall, because it improves the image of a college. Obviously, it is very useful to the students, because students there become much more ready when they leave the college, either to take up very, very good jobs in industry, and more importantly, they could themselves become an entrepreneurs. Okay, but normally what your management might be telling you, or what your let us say principal himself or herself may be telling you, is that, look, I mean, it's okay, doing research is good, publishing papers is good, and so on, but it's also nice if you people can develop a product, innovate a product, develop a product, build a product out of it, and then the ultimate goal should be, we should be able to commercialize, we should be able to sell this, right? Because anybody, that is an ultimate goal, isn't it? This is exactly where the role of industry, role of universities really come into the being. So university becomes, in some way, becomes a conduit. It's like a pipe between what you teach a student and what an industry will be able to kind of, what an industry really requires from your students whom you train, right? So what I've been saying last 5 minutes in some sense is that entrepreneurship ambience or ecosystem that you talked about in the college is not just an isolated development. It is like a it's like an interplay. It's like a collaboration between universities one side, entrepreneurs, yourself means your faculties or students on one side. But the third and most important one, which we'll also talk later in the slides, is the government. Because many times the government policies, the government help, the government subsidies, the government policies are going to govern a lot about how the ecosystem of the entrepreneurship, and more importantly, the impact of the entrepreneurship for commercial benefit will become very useful, right? So we'll kind of see. So therefore, I think we are convinced that the universities are not just the olden days universities and colleges where you only teach some subjects and conduct an exam and the student passes and you say that, okay, now here is your degree, go and search a job, right? Now it has become like a hotbed, you call sometimes hotbed, where you actually foster all the required entrepreneurship environment. Okay, you are actually providing to the students what they would be required to test out their ideas when they develop these products, right? Okay, so students are not waiting until they pass out from a college and go out and one day, first day in their job, they look at how an industry looks like, how a product is made, how a product is costed, how a product is sold, etc. They're not waiting till 4 years. They're actually getting very early introduction and to some extent exposure to this whole field of entrepreneurship and innovation. And by doing this, what you are actually doing is you're actually sowing the seeds. So it's like the seeds are sown not in industry where they go, but in the college itself. And so therefore, obviously, they're better prepared, right? And as I said, all the universities are getting prepared. What is required? What kind of collaboration is required with the local industry? In all that stuff becomes now part of university. So olden days, when some of you, I'm sure, know, when you want to start a college, when you want to start an institute of higher learning, you are saying, oh, I need classrooms, I need computer labs, I need teaching labs, I need etc. etc. No, now you also talked about many other things a college requires. You require a incubation center, you require the industry linkages, you require some some labs, product design labs, and so on, and collaborations with other local industries. See, you can see the requirements and the parts and parcels of the university also kind of become different. And now, so universities are not just academic centers of institutes, but also they're acting as so-called incubation center, technology incubation center, business incubation centers, etc., etc. Okay, so these ideas, therefore, whether it is coming from faculties or students, are actually are being tried out, being developed, and most important, as I said, it is also facilitating collaborations. Some of you must have experienced olden days when you teach a class of, let us say, IoT devices. Okay, you teach a class of IoT devices, then you go to college, you go to class, teach them various principles, interconnections, protocols, and so on and so forth. And sometimes you might be giving small projects to the students as a part of exam, or what is considered for passing or failing, right? But now you actually talk about, if there are a dozen students in a class who are very much interested to kind of do things with their hands and do something, you'll say, okay, let us develop a product. Let us see how an IoT could be very useful to solve a problem like what I told during Corona, for example. Large such kind of innovations came from within college environment itself, even while operating the college in the online modes. Okay, so that is a really big innovations that happen. And then by that, the students can transform, or the universities can transform itself, as I said, for the breeding grounds for, budding entrepreneurs. Now, so this is what I told you just now. So there must be a provision. There must be a, provision for actual space, a lab, so that my ideas, I can actually suitably test it out. I need support. And sometimes faculties or students require to fund a little bit of funding. Otherwise, where do you get money? Even if I want to develop a product, it requires a little bit of seed funding, so that once I make this product out of it, the question of commercializing getting back that money kind of comes into picture. And I can also convert these little ideas into business models and so on and so forth. So here the role of management, role of college management becomes very important. If the college wants the faculty or the students to kind of test out some of their ideas, use their intellectual property to develop certain things, the college must also provide, besides working space and research labs or business incubators, they also require a little bit of financial help to be able to fund it. Okay, and as I mentioned many times already, so the faculty not only plays a role of let us say in the incubator, just like you are a faculty, you are also having a dual role as a mentor in an incubator. Okay, and it becomes a very crucial resource. Okay, because students themselves, they may have ideas, but they have to channelize their energy. Sometimes they come and say, ma'am, I have this idea, that idea, I can actually make a product which doesn't require any energy, but it produces energy, etc. So you can see somewhere they're missing out the basic science and basic technology. Obviously, to know that you can't produce something without inputting certain energy, etc. Because they have good ideas, but it needs to channelize, it needs to guide, it needs to mentor by providing proper guidance into all this. So that's where the important role of faculties comes into picture. So at the end, rightly agreeing with your management, it's not only innovation means just research and publishing papers, etc. That's okay, but ultimately it needs to be kind of ultimately come into a kind of a product. Okay, so but quite often when I give such lectures, there are these questions that are asked. They say, sir, that's okay, I mean, all this looks nice, but since we are always quite loaded with academic programs and teaching load, and nowadays there are lots of other administration loads that happens on campus because of various agencies, various certifications, etc. So what are the areas, how do we decide what is the area in which we want to do innovation or R&D or research or development, etc., etc. So this is a little bit, I don't want to go too much into this. Maybe this is not meant for today's talk, but I really wanted to say, if you look at this typical, the way we draw a graph, first quadrant, third quadrant, fourth quadrant, and so on, you always have these kind of problems which you are interested to solve. They can be very easy problems. They can be very hard problems to solve. Problems means research problems, innovation problems. Okay, so some of them requires very little gain. Okay, they get very little gain in the sense you produce something, but that is a very small innovation. Maybe it is not worth kind of commercializing, but there could be a product or an idea that could be worth productionizing. It could be well recognized and so on and so forth. So you could have something you require more work or less work you require, or there could be something which gives you small gain or big gain. Now the question comes is, how do you select the problems that are suitable for you and your students and your colleagues in the department? So obviously, because I don't have a whole lot of money and resources, I would like to kind of see problems which can be solved a little easily. But it doesn't matter if it gives me to begin with small gain, because I can't expect with a very small effort I get a big gain. It could happen sometimes if you are lucky. So therefore, because your initial idea is to kind of set up certain ambience on campus, I would normally say what they're called low-hanging fruits, right? You say that which are easily pluckable. That's a low-hanging fruits. So one must concentrate seeing your faculty, your strength, your infrastructure on campus, and the set of students that you have. When I go and give such a talk in a typical rural environment in India, the teachers ask me, sir, the kind of students that we get from our college are not somebody who got exposed to all this when they join the first year after class 12. What do we do with them? That's a reality. That is a real problem. So you can't expect that the students to do wonder as soon as they come to first year, right? So therefore, maybe by third year or so, they may be able to kind of join. They may be out of 100 students in the class, maybe 5 of them may be showing certain interest. That's all is like everything starts with such kind of simple mindedness, right? That is what is, I think one must realize when you want to bootstrap, what you call, when you want to start something new in your college, things cannot happen overnight. But this is where the industry connect becomes important to you. Why is this important? Because as I told you, you can't inculcate, you can't do everything, you can't do all the development, you can't add value to your faculties and your students being inside an academic institution. So as I just now mentioned, if your academic institutions happen to be in a more rural setup rather than an urban setup, the problem becomes a little more even harder. So how do you solve this? The one way to solve that is to make an inroads, make a connection, make a bridge, make a collaboration to the local industry. Now, immediately the question comes is that, sir, if you are from a small town, where is big industry coming in? In big towns, yes, there are big industries that becomes common, but in a small village or small towns, etc., it is not that something which is equally to come by, right? Okay, so now how do we solve such kind of problems? We do agree that for entrepreneurship, because it's something very important for economy, so I want to kind of make a big impact, etc. Okay, very good. That is where I start. Okay, and I'll also go and say that, okay, because why you want to start is because I want to start something by which you can create new jobs, you can create new wealth, you can create a big impact, social impact, and through my innovation. So as I said just now, if you are living in a city which is ranked very high for their industry and entrepreneurial activities, then it's very easy. You connect up to the nearest let us say industry and say that, look, we are from a college where we teach this and our students are in this branches. We would like to have internships. We would like to bring our kids to here, show them how things are done. We want you to come to our college and kind of give lectures or motivate them to how they should be prepared to become entrepreneurship ready, and they kind of teach the entrepreneurial education and a culture of developing such certain things. Of course, it's easy to give examples, like many of us know Silicon Valley, of course, which is in US, and all the things that happen, whether it is software, whether it is hardware, all that electronics, etc., happens at this place. But what I wanted to really say, even in that kind of industry-rich environment, entrepreneurship-rich environment, you should see that there are almost more than 10 universities which are actually resident there, right? In Stanford or University of California at Berkeley, etc. These are the top universities in the world. Okay. In fact, I want to tell you, University of Berkeley is really most well known for development of VLSI, electronics, and semiconductors, and so on, inventions. So every single invention that actually came from a university and then went into an industry like in a Silicon Valley, and entrepreneurs are born out of this, etc. I'm not saying that it is that easy for in our country, or for that matter in our small colleges this can happen. But the role model, what I want to really say is, okay, VLSI may be big thing, making semiconductor chips of 5 nanometers, 10 nanometers may be extremely tough to do R&D. It requires huge amount of funds from the university, which we don't get typically in the country. But the model I'm talking about is where there is a kind of incubation that happens in the university campus, and that becomes a starting idea for starting an industry elsewhere. This is what I really kind of wanted to say. That's why small or big doesn't matter. The industry linkage becomes very important to provide, as I told you, internships to the students, and with local companies, we can enhance our ecosystem. What I really want to say is, with your college and the nearby industry, you actually combine and make into one system. Your college is not a separate entity from a local industry. It doesn't matter. Your town may be where, let us say, textile industry is there, or your college may be in let us say, a sugar industry may be there, or your college may be in a place where software industry is
हा
there.
काय होते असे लास्ट मोमेंटला भरले
So,
जातात जास्त चढावड असते
whichever
त्यावेळेला.
is
आता
the
कसं
local
अजून हे
industry.
आहे आणि हे कसं आहे जे मन बदलले की जाण कॅन्सल करून जाऊ पण शकते.
Sorry, I think there is a disturbance. Yeah, thank you. So I'm saying that you should link up to the local industry, whatever that may be there. It's not that you are sitting in a place and you expect, no, I want an industry of VLSI in my village or town. It may not happen. So therefore, entrepreneurship, if you really want to start an ecosystem in your college, you must tie up what is the local industry that you have in the cities and so on and so forth. And then therefore now, as I mentioned to you, with help from industry, and each college has also is developing technology or business incubation centers where you give an opportunity to your students and faculties to kind of work. So by establishing these connections that I talked to you, then universities can develop a good ecosystem for entrepreneurship, and most important, provide faculties and students with a proper advice. Sometimes, see, as a faculties, you may not know what is licensing, what is IPR, what is patent, what is consulting, what is spin-off. You have no idea, right? Because our main focus is in academics. But by tying up with a local industry, we'll be able to kind of do such things. So this is what I really want to give you as a model of how you can drive a change. For example, from starting from a university or college like ours, where we mostly work with a curriculum, we mostly work with subjects, how to impart certain skills to our students. But immediate thing to connect up is how do you take from the classroom learning into a business or a business to research and so on. And then, as I mentioned before, government role becomes very, very important, because only when the government is able to kind of provide a certain conditions which are suitable for innovation, then only we'll be able to kind of move this from to the next one. But the best part that is happening to our country now is that instead of solely depending only on government funding, government subsidies and so on and so forth, it's a situation where a lot of private sectors are also coming to help the academic institutions. I'm sure many of you know, even sometimes, even a simple final year project by students and faculties are being funded by small industries or big industries in an ICT sector, able to convert that into a kind of product or apply for a patent or lead to sometimes a real disruptive technologies. I mentioned a few of them like AI, ML, etc., which is much easier to kind of practice in a college campus. So it's not just anymore depending and looking up only to the government, but your local private NGOs, private industries, etc., are also kind of helping to this. So ultimately, you want to go with those products to the general civil society where they are your customers, they are your clients, they are your business partners, or they are your co-entrepreneurs or whatever it is. So this ecosystem that you want to build on campus is connecting your campus, which was like an island, towards the government, towards the private, towards the entire social fabric that the students get exposed to. I think this approach, I'm not saying that everything is like a textbook. You do ABCD, everything falls in line. It may not happen, but the fact that there is a new realization to take education to a new level, that becomes a big boost for into this productivity. Now, when your students and when your faculty reach to a maturity where they will be able to kind of do something, a new business, okay, so what kind of problems that they really face to convert this into a productive business is that, so quite often what happens is when I want to start some new business, I look at it, I do a lot of homework, okay, groundwork, and then say, okay, I think my interest is to do something in this particular area. Now, obviously, there are some existing companies already exist. Suppose you say that I want to develop an electronics, let us say a Wi-Fi routers or whatever, some strange thing. It doesn't mean that there are no one in the field. They may be already existing, or there may be something which are also new along with you. So what happens in those situations is the one that is, this usual phrase, the survival of the fittest, the technologically very sound and very matured, and the one that, obviously is cheap in cost, is the one that survives, correct? So this kind of, when you improve the productivity, when you improve the quality, functionality, okay, that effect of the business formation occurs when the employment effect is dominated by displacement of some of the existing firms. You should be able to bring up to your company and product in such a way that there may be some existing firms. You should be able to knock them out. You should be able to knock them out on two forms. Knock them out from the sheer what you call functionality, the superiority of the product, or sometimes you knock an existing firm because of the simple cost benefit. I mean, simple costing of the product. So that means you found a innovative way to be able to design a product which can be made much cheaper compared to the one that your competitor is selling today. So therefore, the new firms, when your firm comes on the horizon, when it comes to the market, the competition in the market obviously increase, right? Okay. So therefore, what happens is that the domination of the existing firms obviously will come down. So they also will bring down their cost because they are now competing with you. Otherwise, they will go out of business, right? Okay. Then only firms, as I told you just now, that is what you call survival of the fittest. Only the firms which have that competitive advantage, either it is more efficient or it is, competitive from the pricing, only that will be able to survive, right? So therefore, what happens is, if you came on a horizon, if you started a new entrepreneurship and a company or whatever it is, then after some time into a new business, you will find that many of them who are not efficient, okay, so far, but somehow managing because there is no competition, those firms completely vanish out of the market. I don't have to tell this with an example, because when a new product innovative, you remember when the cell phone came into the market, you had pager as one of the device, which was very useful, right? Which is to help communicating. Earlier we were using landline phones. From there to pager was a great technology. But how long it survived? It didn't survive for long, because the cell phone technology was way, way superior to pager. So pager had hardly a few years of life and it completely vanished from the market, right? So this is how the entrepreneurship, the innovation drives the entire functionality, right? So this so-called entrance of a new job, exit of a new company, all these kind of things, ultimately will have a very positive overall effect on the wealth and prosperity of the country. Because obviously, pager was, more advantageous than landline, but cell phone was brought in much more productivity, much more functionality to people, and they enjoyed it, because nowadays, of course, cell phone brings many other added features which were not there in the beginning when it knocked down the pager technology. So the overall relationship, the overall positive relationship is very strong for entrepreneurs. With, if you are a person who has a very clear thinking, very high ambition, very high degree of innovation, nobody kind of beats you. And that is the one brings a bigger prosperity to the nation. I mean, I don't have to tell examples like this. Some of the major industries that you see today, of course, they made their entrepreneurs very, very rich, probably the most rich in the world. But you should also look at the other side, that those products which were brought in by these very, very powerful innovators in our, or entrepreneurs in our country, it also made the whole country prosper. I mean, while it is true the company which makes cell phone must have made billions and billions of dollars, but it also made an instrument in our hand which you can buy for a few hundred rupees and you'll be able to kind of, communicate with people wirelessly. So prosperity is not only to the person who started all this, but also it is to the country. Okay, so therefore, ultimately, what is most important is that I use very little resources. I use strong innovative component in my product and make my product extremely, extremely competitive. Then the one that would have the strongest impact for the country, and then make the best of economic growth. If you consider the rubrics in terms of money or in terms of the wealth that you create to a country, and that is exactly what kind of happens. So therefore, you one day you kind of start from maybe uninitiated students of class 12 in your college. You kind of the fundamental research, things like what happens in our kind of institutions, become a fuel into kind of do a specific research into applied research into where you convert basic Maxwell's laws into a cell phone design or something like that, and with an R&D partnership and so on. And then the environment is ripe to start a startup or a commercialization or on an incubator on the campus, etc. And once you get a clear mandate, very clearly saying that there is certain cost benefit into doing this, then you with the support of a local industry or on campus infrastructure, you scale up, and then you are able to kind of reach out to not only to the city or the country, but you actually become maybe even you become a global, right? I mean, if you remember some of these little UPI packages, UPI apps that you see on phone, through which you kind of make money transfers just like that. These are all packages. These are all products which are made on campus by entrepreneurs in the students and faculties. Now, I mean, you can't imagine like Paytm, talk about PhonePe, Google Pay. These are all indispensable applications, making millions for the designers, but also made our life so easy. Now you go to a small vegetable vendor and you buy 50 rupees stuff, and you actually pay using Google Pay rather than cash, right? I mean, see, this is how the whole environment kind of comes in. And so making business, the use of doing business, which also comes from governmental regulations, becomes very, very important. So in the complete ecosystem, if I can kind of put it in one figure, this is where we are starting from in a typical environment in a university system. And then we want to kind of, this is our pool of, you can say, resources. Our resources are our students and our faculties. And we want, as I said, to connect up to an industry and look at collaborative programs, do cutting edge research equipment in collaboration with our industry, and develop, as a result of that, develop new IP and also integrate certain standardization strategies. And then you kind of see how, if I make a product with help from an industry, it's not that I make a product and forget about it. I should be able to kind of see the value chain all the way down, right? And this is where also the government comes in the picture, able to kind of allow me to do the exports and get a good investment from. Once you prove this chain, starting from your academic campus to the university, to the industry and so on, and come up to this kind of chain, investment comes by itself. You don't have to even look at, asking and begging for money, because they can see and investors can see a potentially a great product in your hand. And so they will be able to kind of, with that kind of investment, you'll be able to grow from a very simple-minded industry R&D to become a big giant. And that breeds further innovation, and then, develop a further pool of talent, etc. Now, I mean, of course, this is a very, very, simple way of kind of looking at what all is waiting for you to kind of happen. But even if you start from here, go only up to some part, you already kind of saw a kind of ecosystem. You already experienced certain system. You already converted that into developing a good environment to the country, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, the purpose is kind of served that way. So, as I said, I mean, starting from very young children who come on your campus, and you are the one who will be making them, futurepreneurs. That is what, by imparting certain skills which are related to their learning. And then, of course, future skills can be, as I said, it need not stop at one cycle. It can kind of become a lifelong kind of a learning. Okay. Now, because typically you would have seen, you would have experienced as the faculties, it's not that everybody whom you are training, they come with buzz of activity and say, no, I want to become I want to start a startup, I want to become an entrepreneur. No, maybe only a few percent. Maybe even now, even though I'm talking all rosy picture, very innovative driven, country is doing very well, world is doing very well, etc. Only a few percent of the students or workforce or faculties or whatever, they may have an inclination towards doing something like that. Okay, and only a few people, I mean, we must admit, right? Only a few people have that drive to become entrepreneurs. Others, we would like to, you and me would like to kind of get onto a service job or want to do some other job, want to have a kind of so-called peace of mind. But at the same time, of course, we want to avoid all the risks that are involved and so on and so forth. But the guys who are this productive mind and entrepreneurs can actually, inaugurate the economy of the country. What are they doing? They are actually creating new jobs. They're not only making wealth for themselves, they are inventing, they are making, let me say, inventing new technology. They are increasing the productivity, efficiency, bringing the cost of products low. And that is how they are actually doing something good for the whole nation. Okay. But if you want to attract these set of very 1 or 2% of what we just now said, and the government also need to encourage. Suppose I'm a person, I want to start a startup. I should not have a huge system run around offices and getting all these approvals and red tape, what we call regulations. And then what happens is I get discouraged and I will say, look, I already finished my degree and my classmates have all gone into jobs and doing software one, and I'm still running around trying to kind of set up a startup, right? So you need to kind of see that how easy and how, making the life for them much, much better. Otherwise, the environment is not very friendly. Okay. And they're, of course, equally important when, even if you say right now, I'm saying country is doing very well, the world is doing very well, very attractive, etc. But let me say, even if country is not doing well, economy is not doing well, it is doing badly, for example, or it is, our growth has become negative and so on and so forth. But that time, even I think the importance of doing something very creative is more important, because if you suddenly bring out with a novel products, if you increase the competition, if you bring new forms, which increases the demand for new product, then the whole economy can go from decreasing to increasing scale, and it can give employment to new people and make things much more productive. So entrepreneurship is not a buzzword. Entrepreneurship is not anymore something you want to kind of bring up to kind of say what are all avenues exist for a student. But entrepreneurship is something which is now living, and it is no more like a pyramid where only top some half a dozen companies, very, very big companies producing everything from automobile to a common salt or whatever. But you also want to strengthen the base of the pyramid by bringing many more impactful entrepreneurs on the board, and then the combined effect of all this is going to make a big impact to the country, right? So once again, so I mean, if you want to support this entire innovation, what you call continuum, right? So you could start from basic people and skills and the research about which I talked about, how you convert these ideas into actually applicable to the field of your interest, and commercialization and startup and so on, and then ultimately go and reach your public. Okay, in the whole process, the government support is absolutely crucial. It's not enough if your university supports, if your faculty supports, you have a set of what you call very talented young students. But government policies and legislation, as I mentioned, becomes very important in shaping the innovativeness of the country. Okay, of course, you want to protect the property rights, like what we call intellectual property rights or IPRs. Okay, and then making that whole process very simple. And of course, the government has to be proactive in fostering entrepreneurship and innovation. The bureaucratic obstacles which actually discourages young people to go and do something, that needs to really obviously bring down on this. And what you call deregulation. So For example, simple thing, I mean, many of you must have heard about it. Suppose there is someone, one of your student or one of your faculty comes up with products related to, let us say, deploying drones to do certain things. It could be agricultural IoT, or it could be, a kind of transportation of products, or whatever it is. But deploying drones for certain, surveying certain value-added services to strategic applications, etc. Now, if government brings a lot of regulations regarding flying drones and their frequencies, their altitudes, etc., then the entire industry of drone-based apps or drone-based entrepreneurship will doom. So therefore, of course, we are all agree that we must also protect our security, sovereignty, etc. So we should not do anything that is in contrast to that. But at the same time, it is also important that we kind of deregularize as much as possible, reduce the burdens for administrative people. So it should be like more of a single window kind of a system where an academic institutions or university or an inventor will be able to kind of go and get all these things done in one cycle, right? And fast and comprehensive codification. I mean, if I apply, if I take 2 years to get an approval, by the time my competitor is going to kind of overcome these things, maybe from neighboring country, and they will have a complete monopoly on this product, right? So therefore, it is also important that it is a single kind of a window, kind of a system that happens. Sometimes failures happen. In fact, as you know, there are very few startups succeed to kind of do something good. Most of them, unfortunately, they can't survive in the world of competition and so on. But if we kind of give a rubber stamp, we keep a stamp rather, saying that you're a loser, you couldn't kind of do this particular startup and all that, and the whole thing can act very negatively on a person. But again, in a typical environment, especially in a university where a faculty and other group of people get involved, it's very important to help them if there is a failure. After all, starting from ordinary simple bulb to big technologies, they all have seen a lot of failures in the middle, and then only they become a kind of product that we are kind of seeing on that. Okay, so all these things, because as I mentioned, typically an university may not be able to kind of fund all the requirements for a startup and so on. It should be, government also should think of subsidizing some of those products. So luckily, as I said, things are looking good. Even in India, for example, if you compare typically some of the countries with which typically we compare, like China, US, Israel, France, UK, etc. But you can look at the top right column where it's in terms of creating new funds or creating smart cities or developing entrepreneurship environment or starting technology parks, startups, etc. Our country is doing reasonably well vis-a-vis the so-called developing countries or developed countries, right? So that is a very good time of the history where I think it's very, I would say, supportive. It's also a kind of proactive situation that is happening from both government and other agencies. So in a way, it is, I think, a good thing to kind of start. And if you're talking about startup itself, that there are 40-50 startups came up very recently, last couple of years, and there are huge number of lakhs of jobs that are coming up. And also your own government, I mean, state governments are also getting very proactive on encouraging. I think so. This is very receptive and very conducive atmosphere that's happening at the moment, both at the government level as well as on the private level, etc. So how do I bring last, I think, 5-10 minutes, I just want to quickly talk about what kind of education programs becomes important here, because as we agreed that they are asset to any nation because they contribute with a good job creation, innovation, and prosperity to the country. So if you want to prosper this on the campus, we must also be ready to kind of bring programs which are specifically meant for educating these people, right? So because for us today, the students are on campus, it becomes much easier to inspire them before they go on their own. So this is the time where you want to kind of inculcate in their minds that, after all, this is an important thing to kind of modify some of the courses, for example, that we teach in the to the students, because sometimes if you see, if the students have enrolled themselves specifically for business kind of schools, entrepreneurs kind of schools, that is fine, okay, because they already have, by the time they came out, they'll have a very positive impact and so on and so forth. But we can also provide the similar entrepreneurship education to engineering students, medical students, and other managerial skills, which will also increase the tendency to start their own enterprise. So unless they're exposed, they may be good in academics, but they are not been exposed to this new line of thinking. So it's not only to the entrepreneurship courses, but typical technical courses also you can kind of have. This is where on a campus, if you have an engineering faculty or engineering school or a business kind of a school and so on, and the business faculty comes and teaches certain subjects to engineering students, etc. So this interdisciplinary approach, and also sometimes new teaching methodologies will be able to kind of inculcate the entrepreneurship experience to students and faculties at the institutes, universities themselves. So, so this demand is for education programs which can expand from typical academic orientation towards entrepreneurship. And also, if you have business incubators on campus, they will give you a hands-on content which will allow them to test out their ideas and see if they're kind of proving. So this new concept called entrepreneurial universities has kind of come into being. It's now typically pursued very strongly in Western countries, but I'm sure it will become a norm of the day even for India soon. So as you kind of increase the, becoming very important component for innovation. So, and also like universities, they are the main producer of knowledge and publishing, right? So they can kind of play a very wide role for industry innovation. So at the moment, at the current environment, what we are talking about, in a global scale, in an international competition, if you can kind of look at it, is obviously it is not easy to say, you do this, you do this, you do this, you'll be able to become a successful entrepreneur. No, it is not. There are many nuances that you want to teach them, starting from research, starting from product development, costing, how do you do marketing, how do you do various other things, etc. So it's very complicated if you want to become a very competitive individually in the thing. So as I told you, so it requires in some way kind of a system of nationalism. We want to say pragmatism. We want to say that, okay, our country should become, nowadays we talk about so-called Atmanirbhar. We want to have our own products developed by us in our country and so on and so forth. That will add to a kind of social institutions and governmental support, etc. Okay. So this entrepreneurial university, as I mentioned, is in some way response to the big importance that is happening about the knowledge, about both at national and regional system of innovation. So it won't be surprising. We will soon have a kind of ecosystem in India, which is like our traditional universities, which are places of higher learning. You will also have entrepreneurial universities, which actually work towards making the students, you can say, innovation ready or entrepreneurship ready to be able to kind of latch on to something which is kind of happening all around, and they can't be kind of left behind. So if you look at for the last couple of decades, all governments, it's not Indian government, all governments around the world has suddenly seen this big importance of universities where the seeds of such an entrepreneurship can be kind of shown. And they think that this is the best environment where such things can kind of happen. Okay, there may be differences. There may be differences the way you teach in India to the way somebody else teaches in other place, but everybody realizes. So in this context, as Surekha ma'am mentioned during the introduction, that we are working on a multi-pronged in some approach in some sense, and then the NEP to 2020 has also come into being, where there has been more and more of emphasis on these aspects where the students must be kind of inculcated this this research and entrepreneurial ability. So this so-called NRF, National Research Foundation, has been established as a part of NEP20. And so we want to enable that culture of research and innovation in the university, not just only limiting to teaching. So all these types of higher institutes of higher education institutes of learning, whether it could be research universities or teaching universities, as I mentioned to you, and also sometimes the colleges. So now all of them are becoming something like multidisciplinary institutions, okay? And it is not anymore limited only to NITs, IITs, IIMs, and so on. And we want everyone, all the colleges, all institutions of higher learning to become something to focus on research and innovation. And that is how now it has become like a framework in which every institute have so-called incubation center, technology development center, centers for frontiers area of research, and a greater industry academic linkage, about which I talked about, the interdisciplinary research. So it's no more engineering is just engineering. You bring minor courses of humanities, social sciences research, and you can really see, and that is how the NRF gradings are also being getting a kind of metrics coming from these aspects, etc. I think it is a good thing happening to us, good thing happening to institutions, good thing happening to the students, etc. And there are also national bodies, national science, technology, governmental bodies, UGC and DBT, DAE, DST, all of them have been kind of playing a big role, not only, as I said, government, but also many private industries, private enterprises are also becoming part of this thing. So you can even see, the degree programs are getting restructured. We are now talking about multidisciplinary bachelor's degree, talking about bachelor degree after 3 years and so on, and bring in the final year more of entrepreneurship or research-oriented, innovative-oriented thing, or bring integrated 5-year course and etc. etc. You can see the more and more emphasis is put on by not degrading the academic importance of the studies, but also adding this missing component, namely the innovation and research, right? I think that is very, very important. So I want to kind of close by kind of saying that, using a kind of an emblem of NITI. So it doesn't matter at every time, every epoch of humankind, knowledge represents what is the total sum of what knowledge we have created, what innovation we created, what previous generations have seen. If you remember my first slide, that is what I kind of saying. Every one of us add something on our own, right? So it's a perpetual innovation, perpetual learning, perpetual development, perpetually making our life much more, I would say, very fruitful, and in some sense bringing prosperity to that country. And there's nothing like saying that there is all this beginning happened, then beginning can happen today. And in some sense, the NEP 2020 also, just which I talked to you about last couple of slides, also is going in that direction to strengthen what our education system should be. Remember, this has come something after many, many decades of our education system into being. I think it's a good thing that had happened, and I'm sure this will inculcate a more rigor on the academic campuses towards entrepreneurship and innovation, which not only it kind of benefits the country at large, but before that, it will make ourselves and our children, our students, much more useful to the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge with us. So I request participants, if you have any queries, you can ask to sir. If you have any queries. Okay. So,
questions.
I hope there is no queries from the participants. So here, I'm here to share the vote of thanks on behalf of IIC and all the students and the staff. I'm glad to be standing here to express my vote of thanks. A special thanks to our chief guest, B. Satyanarayana sir, for accepting our invitation and for being here with us today. Your thoughts have truly inspired us. From your speech, we got to know that the number of opportunities and the education programs are available in the entrepreneurship. Thank you, sir. I thank our IIC Chairman, Sakre Madam, for always supporting and guiding us. I thank my colleagues who have supported me for making this event successful. I would also like to thank each and every one of you for being here and making this event a wonderful and memorable one for our dear students. I thank our management for providing us a platform for conducting such kind of lectures. Thank you, sir, once again.
Thank you. Thank you.
I request all the participants to put your camera on so that we can get the screenshot of that event. So all participants, you please put on your video on.
Satyanarayana sir, nice speaking for this.
Thank you.
So
Thank
very
you, ma'am.
glad seeing you second time.
Yes,
Principal,
here
sir.
also, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Principal sir and Poddar sir, put your camera on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, both of you. And also thanks
Thank you
all
so
the
much.
participants.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll leave. Yeah.
Nice being with you.
Oh, that's
Thank you, sir.